Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Britt and I am an illustrator and teeny tiny business owner. Over the past year or so, I've sold my art at over 10 different in-person events, from doing my first ever local art market all the way to participating in what's probably the largest artist alley in the UK at MCM Comic Con. It's safe to say that I've had to pick up quite a lot of skills and knowledge when it comes to art markets and artist alley in quite a short space of time. There are a bunch of things that would have helped me a ton when I was first starting out with applying for and tabling at conventions and markets. So for anybody else that maybe doesn't really know where to begin with the process, this could definitely be a helpful video for you, so I'd stick around. Also, just sticking a pin for 1 minute, I do have a big announcement to make in this video. I won't get into it now, but one thing I can say is that me and my business will be relocating at the end of July, and it will be quite a substantial relocation. So if you are interested in hearing about my future plans and the future plans of Britt Bailey Art, then stick around until the end. But for now, let's talk more about artist alleys and art markets and everything that I've learned about them over the past year and a half. Take a seat, let's get comfy. I'm so glad to have you here. First things first, something that I think will come up in this video a lot is the differentiation between artist alleys and art markets. A lot of the info in this video can be applied to both. It's just going to be good for us to kind of understand what I mean when I reference each one of those. In general, an art market is an event that solely revolves around the selling of art or other crafts. They can be themed around the type of product that is being sold. So for example, you might have a ceramics art market or a textiles art market or an illustrated print and comic art market. But the main purpose of the event will be the art and the presence of the artist. An artist alley, on the other hand, is a dedicated area within a broader event where artists can sell their work. I basically think of it as a mini art market within a bigger event, and the events themselves can vary a lot. They're often related to some sort of fan culture or pop culture or like a subcultural niche of some kind. So Comic-Con is probably the most popular example of the type of event where you'll find an artist alley. There are lots of different events out there that have artist alleys. There are anime events, there are gaming events, there are fantasy and horror conventions. You name it, there's probably a convention for it, and it's now very, very popular for a lot of conventions to have some kind of artist or makers market as part of their event. So which format is right for you, artist alleys or art markets? In general, I noticed that the organizers and attendees of art markets really value handmade crafts, work that is visibly sustainable and eco-friendly, and also work that is like made or like at least designed within the country that the market is taking place in. The audience at an art market might be slightly older than an artist alley and with more small c conservative tastes, and by that I mean the art will feel a bit more safe, a bit less alternative. It will feel maybe more familiar, like things that you are very used to seeing people displaying in their homes, as opposed to something that's a little bit more out there. I also say art markets tend to attract quite a lot of tourists a lot of the time, depending on the location. And I think that travel art and like location themed art can do well at art markets for that reason. On the flip side, the art that you see in an artist alley usually has something unique about it that you may not find at a regular art market. Whether that's fan content, unique subject matter, or just an element of pop or subculture, like I mentioned earlier. Obviously, this is dependent on the wider context of the event that the artist alley is in. Not every artist alley is going to have the same audience. For example, if you draw art of Marvel characters or a lot of superhero inspired art, you'd probably do well at an event like a Comic-Con because there will be fans of Marvel and superheroes in attendance. But you wouldn't wouldn't necessarily be as great of a fit for an artist alley in a convention that specializes in Japanese culture or anime. Assess your fit for the event on a case-by-case basis. Of course, there can be lots of crossovers, and there are some conventions like MCM that are widely known to cater to a lot of different niches, subcultures, and fandoms. So even though it is regarded as a comic convention, I think that specific niche doesn't matter so much when you're applying for an artist alley of a convention that is such a kind of melting pot of different interests anyway. I think finding my place as an artist that does do a lot of original art has been part of my journey over the past year and a half. But I would say that you can still apply a very similar kind of thought process in terms of the types of events that you would probably want to apply to, depending on whether or not your audience is likely to be at those kind of events. For example, an event like Hyper Japan that's focused on Japanese culture. Obviously, anime fan artists might do well there, but equally, artists that draw in a cutesy like kawaii type of style, or artists that are inspired by Japanese styles of painting or crafting might do well there. So there is definitely a kind of broader audience that will be going to that event that may be interested in your art. Likewise, if you sell art that has a more gothic and occult vibe, then fantasy and horror conventions could be a really good fit for you. You don't have to literally be doing Freddy Krueger fan art to go down well at a horror convention. When you're looking at an event with an artist alley and thinking about whether to apply for a table, think about its audience and the things that they enjoy, and then think about the audience for your own art. And if you can find a crossover there, then it may well be the right event for you. Now, there are alternative art markets out there that these rules, I would say, do not apply to, but these are kind of fewer and further between to find. And if you do find a good alternative art market, I found that they are some of the most competitive ones to get into. I think that the bar can be really high because I think they really value like handmade, high quality, original work, but also something that is different and unique and might appeal to people with more niche interests. It's almost like a meeting of worlds between the artist alley kind of audience and the regular art market audience, or the regular art market requirements. Personally, I started with a general art market as my first ever kind of experience of selling my art in person. I took part in the Britt Bailey Art market, which was open year round, so it also meant I didn't have the pressure of kind of like fighting over a spot for a specific weekend. I had like a wide choice of weekends I could choose from, and they were very flexible and open about how many vendors they could accept because they were open so often. So I think that made that a really accessible choice for me. My second event was a Comic Con, and I kind of noticed that the audience at that event was way more drawn to my art, I think, than the regular market. So since then, I have been much more focused on artist alleys just because they performed better for me. But that is obviously a personal decision that you'll have to make through experience. When tracking down artist alleys and art markets that you may want to apply for, your best bet is going to be, what else? The internet. A simple search for art markets in your city can be really helpful just to bring up local events. There are also specific websites such as fancons.co.uk which list out all of the events that are likely to have an artist alley in them throughout the year in whatever like province or country that you are in, and they can be really good starting points as well. I found Instagram to be really helpful way to keep track of events that are happening near me as well. I usually find that once I've found one event's Instagram page, sometimes that can link me to others, and I can see if any of the mutuals are also following that page, so it kind of like paints a picture of maybe how popular the event is and that kind of thing. I also really recommend that once you have found an event that you like the look of, take the time to just dive into it a little bit more to try and find out as much about it as you can. So YouTube vlogs, like the ones that I make, just tiny weeny little plug there, can be really, really helpful when you are trying to assess whether or not an event could be good for you and your audience, especially if it's one that's maybe not particularly local to you and you want to know if it's worth traveling to. You want to just get the ins and outs about what it was like to attend and whether or not you think it could suit you. I recommend going on YouTube as well and seeing if anyone else has done a vlog of their experience vending there. So one super important thing to know is that Many art market and artist alley applications happen well in advance. This could be anything from like a couple of months to a full year before the event is happening, depending on the scale of it. Being prepared is crucial. If you find an event that you like the look of and applications are closed, I advise you to sign up to that event's mailing list anyway and follow them on all their social medias so that you can be notified of when the applications reopen again. And honestly, I'm probably going to say this like 10 times in this video, but patience will be key. When I first started applying to art markets and artist alleys, I actually kept a spreadsheet of all of the events that I was interested in and when the applications went out, as well as whether or not I'd applied, how much the table was, etc., etc. Also, I'd sometimes add them to my Google Calendar if there was a deadline for an application, just to really reduce the chance of me missing it, because it can be so frustrating if you miss the window to apply for events that only happen once a year, for example. Another thing I'd also say that is a really helpful tip is if you're looking at an event and the applications are closed, but you know that they have an event at a certain time of year, for example, I advise you to scroll back in their social media. They might have done a post or something about applications opening for vendor tables. Look at when they posted that post. So if it's a Christmas market and they posted it in July last year, chances are that they'll be posting it in around July the following year when you're looking to apply. So just keep that in mind then and check their social media around the time that they posted it the year before. So the other thing you may be wondering is what you should actually sell at an art market or an artist alley. And this is obviously going to vary a lot from person to person, but I will try to condense this into a few tips that I think can be helpful for beginners that are starting to do events for the first time. Number one, I wouldn't try to do too much too fast. This goes for the amount of product types that you have, or if you are a fan artist, the amount of fandoms or just niches that you are covering. I'd suggest picking 3 to 4 main focuses of your table maximum, just so as not to overwhelm or confuse your potential customers, and also just not to overwhelm yourself when you're first starting out with selling your own person. Don't feel like you need to kind of have 1,000 products straight off of the bat. I'd argue that I actually started with more products than I really needed. I started with like prints, postcards, stickers on my website, and then for my first event I kind of pushed myself to do like t-shirts, tote bags, and pouches, which was quite a lot, I think. But you know, we get excited and we try and do too much. I think that's just a canon event, but being out there, you can do things slowly. And also then that means that you can use the experience that you've had at the markets to kind of help you decide what new products to add or take away as time goes on. So the second thing that I would say though is that it can be really helpful to include 3 price tiers when it comes to the products that you are selling. So offering like a low, a medium, and a high price point item can actually just help increase sales a lot. It caters to a lot of people's budgets, which is helpful. Including that medium tier of item is important because a lot of the time if you just have an item that is cheaper and an item that is more expensive, 9 times out of 10 the buyer will go for the cheaper item because they don't want to invest in the more expensive item. But when you put a more expensive item, a cheaper item, and a middle priced item, it feels like a happy medium between the two, and it feels like a better deal because there are those other 2 items to compare it to. So 3 price points is a great way to start. An example of my 3 price points when I first started my store would have been my larger prints, would have been my high ticket items, my medium/small prints, and my postcards would have been my medium ticket items, and then stickers would have been my low ticket item. And I think that was a good way to go. So the other thing that I would consider is the way that you are traveling to the event. If you have a car, like I do and always have since I've started doing markets and conventions, you don't have to worry too much about bulky items. So for example, me choosing to start making tote bags and t-shirts for my first art market wasn't a huge deal because I knew I was going to be using my car to get to the event. But if you don't have a car and you're using public transport and you have to be more compact about the way that you are packing for an event, that is something to bear in mind in terms of the type of product you're bringing and how much product you're bringing. Unless maybe you're someone that has like a huge following online already and you know there's going to be a lot of people at this event, that are going to want to buy your art. Most likely you're not going to like be selling hundreds of things. When it came to the t-shirts and the tote bags, like the bigger kind of items, I think I only had like 2 of each style in each size, for example. And then I obviously did have to increase that a bit as I started to get to events where my audience was kind of more present and I was selling more. And then yeah, with prints, I think maybe I had like 3 or 4 of each print in each size, and that was absolutely fine. So don't feel like you need to go with like dozens of your products. You can keep it relatively small at first. And the general rule of thumb for what exactly to sell at any event is just what I said earlier. Basically, it's think about the audience that will be there and try to cater to that audience with the things that you're bringing. I'm not going to go into too much detail about table display itself. I will instead maybe direct you to my other video that I did like a year ago now, maybe, on my first ever art market display. I think there's still some great tips in there when it comes to putting together your first display. At some point I will do an updated video, but I do still think that the things I mentioned in that video are relevant. You may hear people talk about self-serve versus menu style displays. So self-serve describes a display or a table or a booth where the customer can physically pick up an item and take it to the seller to purchase, the way that you would in like a regular high street store. Whereas menu style displays will have one display version of all of the products showcased so that customers can point out which one that they want, the way that you would order like a burger at a fast food restaurant. As you can imagine, there's definitely pros and cons to each of those options. I think many people favor the menu style at artist alleys, potentially because I think people usually bring more of a variety of products to artist alleys, a large amount of different prints, for example. So the easiest way for them to showcase them all is by just having one of each print displayed, as opposed to having them in like bins that people can flick through. Another benefit of the menu style is that it can reduce the risk of theft if that is something that you're worried about. It's not common, I would say, but it does occasionally happen. It's a risk that, you know, when you have a self-serve display where people are able to just pick up products from your table themselves, you're, I guess, opening yourself up to the risk of theft, whereas having just display products means that even if there was theft, they could only take the one display item. So some people like it for that reason. I would also say that having a self-serve display often means that you have to pre-package your products so that they're kind of just like ready to buy when the person picks them up. But for a menu display, a lot of the time the seller will gather the products in the back and package them as they are ordered. So it can reduce the amount of packaging that you have to do beforehand. But then again, it does mean that you are then packaging on the spot in the moment, which can take more time and maybe be a bit more stressful. Personally, I prefer a self-serve display, although some customers really like talking to me. Some people just want to like shop without having to have a conversation with you too much, and they want to feel like they can browse without needing to specifically have a social interaction, apart from like paying at the end, which self-serve allows. I've talked about this before in some of my vlogs, but I think that when people actually pick up an item and then they can like physically hold it and like compare it to other items, they develop a bond to it a lot quicker. And I think I really like shopping like that as well. Like I buy stuff from menu style artist alley tables all the time, but I do quite like having little brows. So I think I try to create that environment for my customers because it's something that I appreciate too. A little extra bit here that I didn't mention about self-serve and menus: don't feel like you have to choose one or the other completely and utterly. You'll often find that a lot of people have self-serve setups with their smaller products, but then will go for a menu style with their larger products, just from a practicality standpoint. Most artists, I would say, myself included, actually use a combination of the two. So just assess it based on your own needs and the type of projects and the type of display space that you have at any given event. That's also going to have an impact on the type of display that you choose. In either case, I would say say that in order to make your artist alley booth or your art market display stand out as much as possible, I would try and use height as much as you can and as much as is allowed by the event organizers, because it can really help you to stand out and like catch people's eyes. If you think about the fact that when an event is busy, you're kind of like always trying to look over people's heads to see what the next stall is, then having something at a higher height can be really useful. If that's not a product, then a sign is perfect for that, because especially if your sign has a bit of personality to it, that can be enough to just draw people's attention to your table. So that is another really big tip that I would say. Also, that's another thing about the 3 price point items, is that sometimes people have like large prints that they offer, and even though they hardly ever sell them, they act as like great advertising for your art because you can see them from far away. So there are 3 main application styles that I've come across since I've been vending in artist alleys and art markets. First come, first serve, juried, and lottery. So first come, first serve is pretty self-explanatory. The event will have a certain number of artist spots, and once applications open, they will be available for anyone to purchase while stocks last. The benefit of this system is that it favors beginners in a lot of ways, because normally you don't require any prior experience. The most that you'll often need to provide, apart from your basic personal info with an application like this, is a link to some kind of website or social media. The downside of this system is going to be obvious to anyone that's ever tried to get a high profile concert or festival tickets. The likelihood of getting into a show depends a lot on your schedule lining up with the application drop and the strength of your Wi-Fi signal. Now, of course, this is normally the only case with the really popular events, and not all of them will be an instant sellout like this, but it can be a pretty unpleasant experience to go onto a convention website ready to make an application, only to find out that all of the tables were snapped up 1 hour into application time. The other downside is that the lack of jury with a system like this can mean that the quality of art at the convention isn't as high as it could be. And by that I mean the likelihood of seeing AI art, drop shippers, and just general slop is greatly increased. It's mostly convention style events with artist alleys that I've seen using this kind of system for applications, and it's rarely used by art markets, as they usually have at least some kind of vetting in place. So the other popular system is for all applications to an event to be reviewed by a jury, after which tables will be allocated to the successful applicants, with unsuccessful applicants either being rejected or added to some kind of wait list in case there are dropouts down the line. This system, I would say, is quite well liked, as it is more merit-based, and usually the application window is open for a lot longer because it doesn't rely on how early you apply, but more so the quality of your application. However, this system isn't always that beginner-friendly, because oftentimes the jury will take into account your previous experience, and if you are a beginner, you might not have as polished a brand or application as your peers, which will reduce your likelihood of being selected. Also, honestly, artists, alleys, and markets are getting more and more popular, which means the standard is just getting higher and higher, so the competition can be very tight. It also means that a set number of tables are being split between a higher quantity of artists. So even if your work is amazing, you're not guaranteed a spot year on year, which can be pretty demoralizing if you're rejected. Also, as with a lot of job applications, sometimes rejections won't even be notified because of their high quantity of applicants, which can leave you kind of like hanging, which can suck sometimes. I've noticed this is more common with art markets than artist alleys. Artist alleys do normally get back to you, but some art markets don't. So you kind of just have to choose when to let things go on your own. And the last category I wanted to mention is the lottery system, which again is pretty self-explanatory, I think. Applications open, names get put in a hat, applications close, names get pulled out of a hat. I don't know how popular this format is to use on its own, but I do know that a lot of events, I think, use it in conjunction with the other formats in order to make things a bit more fair. For example, maybe a jury will review the initial large pool of applicants that an event receives, and then after that stage, it will just be a lottery as to which of those successful applicants get chosen to get tables. So, if you want to stand a fighting chance in more competitive juried applications, I highly recommend that you create a digital portfolio specifically for your convention and art market applications. While this isn't strictly necessary for most convention applications, especially not first come, first serve ones, having a dedicated convention portfolio has been game changing for me in the latter half of my first year of doing events. So last year, I decided to up my application game by making a one-page online portfolio with card. I had seen a lot of other people use it and it just seemed so easy to use. And I loved that it was only a single page, which would make it really easy for those viewing my application to consume all of the information that I wanted to give them in kind of like one easy hit. And this one page card website is what I will link in the website section in any of my applications. So my card page includes a selection of my artwork, my products, and examples of my previous booth setups. And even if you haven't done a convention yet, so you don't have pictures of an actual table setup, doing a test run of your table at home and including a photo can also be a helpful way to show convention and event organizers that you are prepared. I also obviously include a bio and a bit of background about my work to hopefully make myself more memorable and appealing to whoever is reviewing my portfolio. The overall impression that I want to leave with my portfolio is that I have a cohesive brand and I'm serious about my business. Of course, you can just use your social media or your store as your website link if you don't have a portfolio page yet. I just find that having it this way is a lot tidier, and it also means that I can kind of tailor it depending on the event that I'm applying to, like much the same way that you would do with like a work cover letter or CV. So my second point when it comes to applications is that social media matters, but not the way that you might think. So I know social media is not always the part of being an artist or even running an art business that a lot of us love, me included, despite the fact that I do really enjoy sharing here on YouTube. In general, keeping up social media is definitely a kind of point of stress for me a lot of the time. But I would say that having at least one active social media account can be really helpful for helping you to stand out in applications. So I'm definitely not saying that you need to have a lot of followers. I don't even have a lot of followers now in the grand scheme of things, and I definitely didn't when I first started applying to artist alleys and markets. But I think having an account that you update semi-regularly at least shows that you are kind of active within the process of creating more artwork and trying to find an audience for it or engage with the audience that it already has. And also it can act as a portfolio itself for conventions and markets applications. So thinking about like my Instagram as almost just a portfolio that I regularly update for myself and for event runners or people that actually care about what I'm doing can be a good way for me to like keep posting without always being worried about like how many followers I have or how many likes I get, because it's just kind of keeping up like a visual diary of my business and my work and my process. So that can be another option if you don't feel like making an entire separate web page for convention applications. Depending on the convention and the table size that you're looking at, these spots at these art events can go from anything from £50 to thousands of pounds. So, budget is definitely something to think about when you're considering getting into all of this. So, for a lot of conventions, they will have an artist alley, which is what we've been talking about thus far, but they may also have another area of the convention, which they might call like the exhibition hall or the traders area or just the general market area, which are open to other businesses selling things like merchandise and toys and whatever else to buy spaces at. And they are usually more expensive tables than in the artist alley, because the artist alley is aimed at more indie individual artists and creators, as well as the fact that sometimes the tables are like bigger in those areas or you have the ability to buy bigger booth spots. A lot of artists do kind of outgrow the artist alley and then they start to get tables in these other areas like traders or exhibitors, which costs more. But if you've kind of grown your business enough, you can make back those costs. A lot of people, I think, are like me. They're more kind of smaller individual artists, and so we really value affordability. So the safest bet for us is artist alley tables. And even for some established artists, the safest bet is still artist alley tables, because like your chances at an event of making back your £200 table and then making profit is usually higher than your chances of making back an £1,000 table fee. So all that being said, artist alley tables are usually the first to go at these type of events, and it can be very, very tempting in a case like that you feel like splashing out on one of these either larger tables or a table that is in another area, like an exhibitor's area. And I mean, I've been there, I've done that. I did that at Hyper Japan my first year. I ended up splashing out on a more expensive table, and luckily that did work out for me. If that is something that you can afford and you really, really think that your target audience will be at this event and it will be worth it, then I wouldn't say don't do it. It might be worth considering doing it. But be practical and be patient, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you really regret like splurging on something that just ends up not being worth it for you at all. So if you are a beginner, like I was a year or so ago, I really recommend doing something similar to what I kind of ended up doing, which was starting local and starting small. So for those that have been watching my vlogs for a while, you'll know that my first ever Comic Con that I sold my art at was a very small one-day Comic Con that happens in Bournemouth, that was run by Creed Conventions, who run a lot of kind of local one-day Comic Cons throughout the UK. Like, I do live in London, so it wasn't actually local for me, but it was a 10-minute drive from my dad's house, so I didn't need to pay for accommodation, which was very important. And obviously I was reducing a lot of costs there, which are like precious in those early days, and I guess every day, to be honest. Because this event is smaller and more low key and not in super high demand from other artists, it meant that I was able to secure a table actually relatively last minute. And also it wasn't very expensive in the grand scheme of artist alley table prices. I think I probably paid about £60 for my table at the time. Also, the fact that I did stay with my dad meant that I had somebody that was able to help me on the day as well, which really helped reduce my stress and like take some of the pressure off, because I had a family member that was able to come and help me, which is another benefit of doing a convention that is local to you when you're just getting used to how they all work. This meant I was able to test out my art with the audience of a Comic Con for the first time, but with much lower risk than if I had tried to splash out for like a bigger, more high profile convention before I was ready for it. That event was really, really good experience for me. It was a really big confidence boost for me because I was in unfamiliar territory, and I think being able to come somewhere with like low risk and then still make a profit and like have my art received really well was just what I needed at that stage in the journey. Maybe you've already followed all of the steps that I've talked about here, or maybe you've tried a bunch of other things and you're still getting rejections from markets and artist alleys. And I will stress that it is just really competitive right now. And I think it is harder than ever to actually get spots at a lot of these places. I would say just really try not to be too hard on yourself and use up your energy like feeling dejected about it. Obviously feel your feelings. Like it happens to me all the time. Like, I'll get a rejection and it will make me feel down, even if logically I know that it's fine and like, you know, like there's going to be something else, going to be another opportunity, or I can focus on other work. It just never feels good, right, to be rejected. But equally, I think you just have to really pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and just keep trying to make your art and your brand better, and not just better, but more appealing to these event organizers and to potential audiences, and just something that they're going to find harder and harder to turn down. And then you will start getting the spots that you want. Sometimes it's going to take a few attempts, and sometimes you're going to go backwards before you go forwards, but like perseverance, I think, is the key in this, and resilience as well, because rejections might happen, and the ability to like get up from them, analyze it, analyze what you could change about your application, analyze what you couldn't change. All of those skills are going to be really useful when you're starting to try and get into these in-person opportunities to sell your art. Disclaimer, I'm not I'm not going to give any legal advice in this video because, first of all, I'm just a girl. And second of all, I don't want to. This is something I've been messaged about like on Instagram and stuff like multiple times, and that is public liability insurance. And it can sound quite like intimidating, but it's actually pretty simple. So as far as I understand it, this is insurance that some like event organizers require from their exhibitors to show that like if an accident happened near to our table or around our table, we would be protected from like getting sued. Basically, you can get one-off cover for the event that you're doing, or you can get like monthly or yearly cover if you know you're going to be doing a lot of events that will require you to show that you have this. For my first ever event that needed it, which was Hyper Japan, which I think is when a lot of people here come across this, I will put the company that I used here. I think it was really affordable. Maybe it was like £30 for the event, so that wasn't that bad. And now I do use a rolling service because it works out cheaper still if you do that. So that's something you can look into if you are doing more events. But there are lots of places that offer it. It's pretty easy to get, pretty quick to get, pretty cheap to get. And then you will just get the insurance that you can send off to the organizers that are asking for it. So don't panic about PLI. It's pretty easy to sort out. If you have been successful at some of the things I've been saying here, and you have been accepted into your first art market or artist alley, congratulations. That's to you. Well done. For you, I will give a handful of the most valuable pieces of advice I feel that I can impart to you after over a year of participating in markets and artist alleys. So my number one tip, remember your essentials, please. I consider my essential products to be my card reader, my iPad, my mobile phone, and my cash bag. Without those, I can't take payments. And not that it's all about money, but that is one of the main reasons that you're there. So I always need to make sure that I have my essentials with me, and I have forgotten them before, and it is super stressful. So make sure you know where those things are at all times and you keep them close to you. I would also keep them close to you during the event because I would consider them to be very valuable, so you don't want to lose track of them during setup or takedown or anything like that. And you want to make sure that those things that require power are charged. So your card reader and your phone or iPad or whatever you're using to take transactions with, make sure it's charged the night before. With the card readers, also make sure that if they need any updates running, that you do that ahead of time, or you want to be like ready to go as soon as the day starts. If only for your own like stress levels, I would say just make sure that you've covered all of those bases. So the second thing I wanted to talk about is like customer service practices when you're at a convention. While some people do love to chit chat, a lot of people that attend art markets or conventions, or even vend at them for that matter, are introverts, and they are easily startled. So my usual habit when I'm behind the table is to smile by default if there's customers near my table, greet people if they make eye contact with me, and occasionally I will like offer a piece of advice or info if somebody has been browsing at my table for a while, or if they look like they're having trouble deciding or might want to ask me something themselves. Of course, if someone comes to my table and like strikes up a conversation with me, then I'm like more than happy to chat away, but I usually let people make the first move themselves. The main aim, I think, is to make your table feel like a kind of safe and approachable space for people. So that means that you don't want to look super sullen or like disinterested, but you also don't want to be like staring them down or like pushing deals on them immediately. I think also if you kind of just like hit somebody with a wall of information about your art products straight off the bat, that can kind of overwhelm them. But obviously every customer is different, so this is kind of just like my blanket approach, and then I can suss out what it seems like people want as they start to engage with me more or not. So one thing that I have found really, really helpful for when I feel a little bit like awkward behind the table and I don't want to make a customer feel uncomfortable is that I will like busy myself with a task so that they don't feel watched, but they also like know that I'm there if they need me. So for me, this could often be like packaging prints, adding brand stickers to my paper bags, or like general kind of behind the table admin stuff. But for other people, it could be knitting or drawing. I think the aim is that you want to feel like you're accessible if they need you, but like you're not really like watching what they're doing at the same time. There's definitely a sweet spot with it, but like you can kind of experiment and see how it feels at different events, and you'll probably find like a little soothing activity that you do when you feel a little bit like anxious as well, because I think it's useful for like you as much as it is for your customers to have like something you can do behind the table. Okay, my next tip is to consider comfort. You're potentially going to be spending a lot of time standing up at the art market or convention that you're tabling at, so I really suggest wearing comfortable shoes to the event, even if they don't look as cute with your outfit. I've been there and it wasn't worth it. I also recommend double checking that they provide a chair, and if you're bringing a friend or a helper with you, checking how many chairs that they provide if sitting down is going to be important for you. Also, I would say bring layers regardless of the time of year, because you kind of don't know how hot or cold it will be inside of an event space. Like some of them have really high aircon, so even in the summertime it could get really chilly, and other ones, even in the wintertime, they're really stuffy and hot. So I would just recommend having like different layers that you can put on and take off depending on what the temperature's gonna be like, and don't assume, because sometimes it really surprises you. Also, please don't be like me and not bring yourself any food or water. You're gonna need that. Your energy can really quickly drop when you're at one of these conventions or markets all day, so I do recommend bringing snacks and bringing drinks, or at the very least like a bottle of water with you. Also, if the convention or the market gets really busy, it gets harder for you to be able to comfortably leave your table to get food or water, so you can kind of find yourself stranded back there without any resources, and it's just going to make you tired and it's going to make you feel unwell, and it's just not good for you. So yeah, think ahead, bring snacks, bring water. Okay, another super important one is to prepare to receive cash from attendees. One big mistake that I first made when I started selling at markets and conventions was that my products were priced at non-round numbers. Because a lot of attendees pay in cash, it quickly becomes incredibly awkward to give people change for a print that is priced at like £16.75, for example. Like there's only so many 25p's that you're going to have on you at any one time. So I suggest that even if your online prices for your products are like non-rounded, for in-person events, I would recommend you to round those out just to make it easier for you and for the people paying. So I would make the 16.75 thing 17 or 16 for the purposes of the event. And as well as that, make sure that you bring some kind of change with you or get some kind of cash out before the event, so that you are able to give people change if they try and pay in cash. It comes up more than you think, so it's something to bear in mind. My next tip is something that I've obviously been doing a lot, which is to document your experience as much as you can. And by this, I don't just mean like recording videos and taking photos, but keeping track of what you're selling and what you're not selling can be really helpful. Even if you don't have a card reader that is linked to your online store or something like that, so it directly records which of your products are selling or not, I think just jotting it down somewhere, especially during your like first year of events, can be really helpful, so that you can look back at that data afterwards and kind of analyze the trends of what people seem to be buying or not. This can then help inform future marketing or art making decisions. Also, even if you don't intend to actually like vlog or really post much about the events that you do the way that I do, I would say that taking photos and videos is still really good to do, because it'll give you something to refer back to once the show is over. For example, if you wanted to recreate the table display that you did, you'll have a visual reference for how you did it. It'll also help with future applications, like I said, because they love to see that you have experience and the way that you've put your table together. So actually recording it when you're at the event is a really important step. Also, if you do have and use social media like that, I do think it is good to post about the events you're going to. I usually try to do a post before, during, and after an event. So the post that I make before an event will just be to inform people that I'm going to be there, maybe create a bit of hype about whatever products I'm going to bring, especially if there are new ones, and just give any info that I want people to have before the event happens. The post that I make when I'm at the event will normally just be a quick video or photo of my booth, again reiterating that I'm at the event and where my table is located and info like that for people to see. The post that I do after the event is normally just a roundup of my experience, and a chance to say thank you to the organizers and my customers and anyone else. And I think this is a really great way to, again, remind people that you exist, because there's people that might have gone to the event and taken your business card or scanned a QR code or whatever and followed you on social media and then just like gone home and not thought about it again. But then they will get pushed that notification that you have posted right after the event, and it can trigger their memory as to your table and your products, and that could result in a purchase or just some more engagement from them. So I think that doing a post after your events and having some material to post that you've recorded at the events is a really helpful thing. Also, when I do the post during an event, I'll usually make sure to tag the location as the actual convention center as well, because I've heard that that can help for people attending to be able to be pushed the content. And it's also something that they might be actively using to search for vendors that they might want to visit. So yeah, tagging the location of the convention center is also a helpful tip. And my last tip for what to do when you're at the convention is something I've kind of touched on before, but it is focus on community as well. Selling your art in real life and participating and being part of these in real life events has so much value beyond just selling the product. Chatting and engaging with your customers, or just listening to the way that they interact with your art and your table, can also be really informative and give you a great insight into your audience and the way that they think. And also, don't underestimate like the community that you can build with the other exhibitors at these events. Like, it can start quite small at first, but before you know it, you'll honestly be like running into familiar faces and like chit-chatting and swapping tips with people that you start to see more regularly as you do more of these events. And like, it's something so reassuring and comforting about there being a space like that where there's a lot of other people kind of that are like-minded to you and pursuing similar goals to you. And in a world of like very independent art making, I think that art markets and conventions is just like this little beacon of like social contact that even the most introverted of us can like sometimes really need. So I would say from that perspective, it's definitely something that could be worth trying. Whew. I don't know if it's because I've been staring like at my window like while I've been doing this video and it's really bright. I just feel like I'm like going blind a bit now. I definitely need to spend some time in a dark room once I'm done with this video. But thank you for sticking with me if you're still here. We pretty much are done now. I think that's everything. I mean, that's everything that I wrote down that I wanted to cover. I'm sure I've overlooked several areas. I mean, this is a big topic. There's so much experience I don't have. Like, I've just kind of been going over the things that I've personally learned over the past year and a half. So completely opening up the discussion to anyone watching this that has more tips or has other opinions or advice or whatever, to just put them down in the comments. It'll be helpful for me, and it will be helpful for like anyone else that is a beginner that is trying to get into artist alleys and or art markets. So with that all out of the way, it's finally time for me to spill the beans about some of my future plans. So as some of you may or may not be aware, Charlie and I will be jetting off to Vancouver at the end of July. It still doesn't quite feel real yet, but I've been dying to share the news like here and on my other socials for ages, so I just had to like put it out there. It is officially happening. While this is not the end of my art business by any means, watch this space. I will be doing a really big moving sale on my Etsy and my website for all of my current artworks that I have, because I need to shift a lot of stock before we go. Just popping in again because I do have a couple of updates as of final editing and posting of this video. So my moving sale will be live on my website and my Etsy Monday the 15th of June by 6 p.m. If you are interested in grabbing any things from me, there will be big discounts. Another piece of good news is that I do have one more market taking place in London before I go. On the 4th and 5th of July, I will be at the Urban Garden Fair in Canary Wharf. It's a really lovely East Asian themed market that I will be selling my work at for the last time for at least the next 2 years in the UK. That's the end of my PSAs for now. Also, like, I just wanted the chance to say a huge thank you to those of you here in the YouTube community, in the art community, who have been supporting me so far with my endeavors. Like, I've been constantly surprised by the amount of camaraderie and kindness that has been around me since I've started this journey, and I can only hope for half as much as that when I'm across the pond. So thank you all for the support so far, and this is very much not the last that you will be seeing of me. So watch this space and wish me luck for my adventures as an artist in Canada. As usual, if you've made it this far, thank you so much. If you like this video, I would love it if you like the video. And if you want to see more art content and artist life content and vlogs, then feel free to subscribe. I'll be continuing to make a video every single month, even once I am not in the country anymore. Anyway, I'm super tired. I feel like my brain has turned to mush after talking to the camera for this long, so I'm just gonna hope that when I go to edit this footage, it makes sense and I have enough to cobble together. But anyway, for now, I will see you next time. Bye!